I'm Matt Lange, this is the MakeNoise DPO, and this is what it means to me. The DPO in MakeNoise terms is a dual prismatic oscillator. In Matt terms, it makes my favorite kick drums as well as making really cool Reese bass lines. The DPO is one of the first modules I ever got when I got into modular synthesis, and it still, to this day, is one of my favorites. So without further ado, let's jump in and I'll show you why I like this thing so much.
So let's talk Reese's first. I like using the final output on the DPO. It's essentially a output that has a morphing waveform, but there's a lot of internal modulation you can do to really get that signal moving, which is especially helpful for a Reese bass. So on its own, without any modulation, it sounds like that, and you can scan through the wave from a more sinusoidal kind of thing onto this triangle-y spiky thing. I tend to like it to sit right about there. And then we can start modulating the oscillator with the other oscillator. So let's turn up the frequency modulation amount. And you can see it's moving already, and if you move this around, it really screams. So let's just find it to the point of where it sounds right to us. I like that personally. Now let's just take that off for a second. The angle is a really big parameter for me because you essentially tilt the angle of the waveform. It sounds kind of like pulse width modulation, and since the DPO doesn't actually have pulse width modulation, this is kind of a way to do something similar. And I just have an LFO coming out of maths going directly into the angle. And if you move it alone, you can hear it's starting to get warpy. So let's just add some modulation. And a little goes a long way with this guy. So now when we add the FM back in, without it, or with it, it gets really warpy real quick. Let me just change the pitch. And lastly, we can modulate the wave shape, and I also have a different LFO going to it. And if we take off the other stuff, it's a lot more fun though with the modulation. I tend to like a little more than a lot, and the angle is really what does the most for me. That's when it really starts moving in the way I personally like a Reese to move. And that's a Reese. All right, so let's talk kick drums. Just so you know what's going on here, I have a sine wave, just a pure sine coming directly out of the DPO, and that is going directly into our VCA. And that's all it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is add an amplitude envelope to the VCA, and I'm just going to use a channel out of maths to do that. And we can actually just extend the length of it for the time being. And that's kind of like an 808 thing already. And you know, you can tune it. Whatever. But then where the real magic of this comes in is I'm using that same envelope to also trigger a pitch envelope coming out of the first channel of maths. And we're using a very hard exponential curve. It's about as hard as it could be. And that's going directly also into the exponential FM input of the DPO. So as we turn up the FM amount, you're going to hear it immediately. And that's usually around where I like it to sit. I'll tweak it a bit, but we can go way overboard. And now we're getting laser beams. So let's not do that. But I tend to find personally, that's about where I like them to sit. Now, it's really good for doing like very long sub drops also. And a really easy way to do that is just turn up the decay of our amplitude envelope. That's nice and long. And now we can actually extend the decay of our pitch envelope. Really simple, but it's really effective, and something about the DPO just sounds the best of anything I have when doing this. And sometimes you don't want it to be as attacky, so that works a little bit better. Just turn down the amount of FM. And it's great for, you could do any kind of 808 kind of thing with this too, and it's just gonna boom. But typically what I like doing is, I like a little bit shorter. And that right there is pretty much the basis of every kick drum I make on the DPO. Later there might be some processing, always some compression, maybe some limiting multiband compression. But right now, all that's happening, it's just the pure sine wave output coming out of the DPO through the Tangle Quartet VCA and just directly into the converters of the Avid Pro Tools Quartet. Pretty cool.
If you liked what you heard, check out the MakeNoise DPO and look up MakeNoise. They're awesome people. They make great stuff. And finally, you can subscribe to this channel. I'm probably going to do more of these gear things periodically from time to time. You guys requested it, so here I'm doing it. See ya.